Good morning, everybody! Very excited to have another Hackster Café this week. And we are featuring a conference that is going live this Friday and Saturday, August 1st and 2nd, the Open Healthware Conference, which is under the aegis in some way of OSHWA, and I'd love to hear more about that. But first up, our guests are Avinash and Herine from who have various ways of representing within OSHWA. How's it going, folks?
Hi, it's going really well. I'm happy to be on this stream. Thanks for having us.
Cheers.
Yeah, it's going great. Thank you for the introduction. Happy to be here. Happy to talk about OSHWA and our conference.
Yeah! We'll be hearing from both of you during the conference about different things. But first, could you quickly each give us a description of what your involvement is in OSHWA and in the conference?
Yeah, Avinash, if you want to go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Let's see. So I am a postdoc at OSHWA, and so we're part of an NSF-funded grant to explore the healthware ecosystem, so health and medical open source technology, and we're trying to promote it and support it through various efforts, including a new healthware certification. Yeah, thank you. And so a little bit on my background, I did my PhD in mechanical engineering, my undergrad in biomedical engineering. So I come from that healthware space, and I worked with NASA on a graduate fellowship. I was working on health and medical devices for spacesuits and astronauts. And so, yeah, I've always been in the open space since since getting into technology and my education. And the open source space has always been a platform for me to learn technical skills that were otherwise limited to proprietary spaces or closed spaces. So just the ability to learn, adapt to the environment, you know, kind of keep up with the world is kind of what drew me into open. And then
Awesome.
through that, yeah, sorry, I know I'm going on and on.
Oh, no worries.
OSHWA just is that next step for me, so I'm excited to be a part of it.
Apologies if I jumped in there early. I think it's really cool what you're doing. And we're going to definitely hear more about that also. You're giving a talk at the conference, is that right? And we might see a slide or two, which would be really cool.
Yeah, so the talk will be about our study that we're doing, which is to interact with people in the healthcare community through interviews, workshops, and meetings. And so we'll be talking about the data and insights that we've gained through that process.
Really cool. Awesome. Herine, what's up?
Yeah, so I'm the Healthware Community Coordinator, and I have all my windows open, so excuse the cars outside. It's pretty hot here. But yeah, I'm the Healthware Community Coordinator. I came from Planned Parenthood Marmonte, where I was the digital learning producer there. And my role essentially is bridging the gap between the general public, people who work on open source health hardware, healthware, and the medical and health and wellness sort of fields. So kind of connecting everyone together, promoting the events, a lot of community building, and that's a lot of my role working on this conference. But yeah, I came in about 2 months ago to work on this conference, and so that's kind of been my journey with OSHWA. And yeah, my interests specifically kind of lie in a general accessible health and medical, but also just really, I really like facilitating ideas and brainstorming, and that's a lot of what this is. So yeah, I'm really excited to be a part of the OSHWA team.
Woo! Thank you, folks. Sweet. So let's just take a quick look at the schedule to let people know like what they can get excited about. Because the more that I look at this, the more it's sort of like, I definitely see some names that I'm familiar with. Avinash, I hadn't made a connection with you before, but what you're doing seems really cool. We've also got Jean Rintoul on the schedule, who's been doing this Spectra device that sort of provides a more healthy alternative to X-rays and things like that. So, as well as more accessible is cool. You can watch online or in person for free. So, feel free to grab one of those. If you get an in-person one and choose not to attend in the end, if not able to attend in the end, they ask that you refund your ticket so that someone else can come, because it is 100% free, which I love because, especially in the subject of open healthware, but ideally in all conferences we'd have sort of measures like that make it easier for everyone to attend. And I've always there's like, funding stuff as well. But I love that you're making it work and people can just jump in for a few hours on one of these days or for the whole thing. Folks, so what time does this start and how do people actually join?
Yeah, so the conference starts on Friday. It continues until Saturday. It's a 2-day conference. The time starts at 9 officially, but at 8:30 we start registration and we're offering free breakfast.
Ooh.
So yeah, folks are welcome to come as soon as 8:30 if they'd like to get a little snack before the event. But the official event starts at 9.
Cool. We'll have a welcome from OSHWA. You're both going to be giving some overviews of info from OSHWA, and then people who are joining virtually, there's already a stream set up for each day, so you can just both of those are linked in the description. You can open them from here. You can go to the conference page and just have a look. Does it help if people register for the conference, even though they can just sort of go to these watch pages?
Excuse me. Oh my gosh. Yes. Yeah. It helps us just kind of keep track. We got one of the reasons why this event is free is not only because of accessibility, but because we got funding to be able to make it free. So we really want to just track that and make sure that we see how many people are coming through. And obviously we want to keep in touch. So yeah, if you can RSVP, that would be great. We want you in the community and we want to keep in touch with you even after the event.
Beautiful. And just having a quick scroll here, we've got people, year one open healthware findings. Is that you, Avinash? I think that, it was, yes. So what's with the year one open healthware findings? Is there an overarching project that's being published somewhere, or how can we sort of dig into that?
Yeah, so that would be our presentation slot on essentially what does it mean and meant for us, and what does it look like to interact with the healthcare community, which before 2020, before COVID, was just really separated and isolated communities, and then after COVID, there's been a global effort to connect, and an encouragement from our user base that we want healthware to be open and accessible for times of crisis and also regular, ordinary life. And so we're trying to facilitate that. And so, what did it look like for us to interview experts and community members, and what did we learn from that? That will be our year one findings topic.
Really cool. And like Herine mentioned, around the conference, there's this. Actually, it may be a different grant, who knows? But maybe you can tell me. But this NSF Pose grant that you're talking about that enabled the creation of this open healthware ecosystem. Very cool.
Yeah, that's the one. You're totally correct.
Beautiful. I had never heard of this one, and I'm very excited to learn more about that. Then we've also got ventilator science. So this was a huge thing, of course, at the height of the pandemic, and the shortage of these. So I think I saw one at Open Hardware Summit a couple of years ago, and I'm curious to see if that's the same one or not.
Yeah, this one is being or the speaker for this talk is Alex Hornstein. So I'm not sure
Oh,
if that's still, but yeah.
So Alex Hornstein is also known as the creator, or one of the people behind the Looking Glass. And actually, let me just pull up the main schedule here because we get a little bit more visibility into it, which is beautiful. So one of the two people that I definitely recognize off of here, then we've got Care Again, a community-driven prototype platform to make medical technology more accessible, which sounds fascinating. And I actually had that tab up earlier, but I'm trying not to swamp you.
Yeah, it's so easy to get lost in the sauce. If someone told me 5 years ago I would be in the same room with people creating these incredible devices, I would never have believed it. It's awesome. And yeah, I'm just to have everyone in one room. I'm very excited. All of these talks, I'm just really thrilled to hear more about.
Yeah, and there's everything from like neuroscience and nerve sensors and nerve interaction to like open legs and to manufacturing, and then the practical methods of getting involved with this on the ground, which is very fascinating. Like refining 3D printed tungsten shielding. I don't even know what I would use that for. Like possibly it may be like an RF shielding thing, but I'm very much excited to figure out what it actually is. Already signed up for this. But we actually had Jin Rintoul on Café a few years ago to talk about spectra, so it's very exciting to see that that project is still going and get an update on what they're doing with that. It's portable and open and also affordable medical imaging that can be used as, for example, an alternative to mammograms and things like that. Then maybe they're still called mammograms if it's used in a different technology. I don't know. I'll find out. And then lots of stuff on prosthetics, which for me personally, as someone who builds wearable tech, is a fascinating topic because it's like I want to learn how to make stuff work with the body and how to make it, sanitary and comfortable and stable and things like that. I feel like I'm talking a lot. I would love to hear a bit more from Avinash about the slides maybe that you're thinking of showing.
Yeah, thank you for going through that and giving us your insight. Yeah, let me if I can share really quickly.
Yes, I will pull it up. And in the meantime, everyone, feel free to drop your questions in the chat and check out the schedule, which is linked in the description below.
Are you able to see the screen here? This healthcare community study.
Not yet. You may need to hit another button in order to get it to
Oh, here we go.
share
Yes.
through. It's always one more button. Here we go.
Okay, cool. So I guess I'll give a quick.
There we go.
Yes.
Ooh.
Good deal. So quick background is we interviewed over 100 people in the open healthware community, makers, users, clinicians, funders, procurement people, and just all over the spectrum of people who use and make open healthware. And on the left, as we found, these are the things that get brought up. Issues of trust and kind of mutual understanding, concerns about quality of open healthware, the certification hurdles for makers to get FDA certified and CE certified, and so forth, the legal risks and other basic roadblocks and challenges to open healthware. And again, in communication with our communities, we're talking about how do we mitigate these issues? How does OSHWA how can OSHWA play a role in mitigating these? And so through the development of educational resources, community building opportunities like our conference and our open healthware certification, which is kind of a supplement to our existing open hardware certification, we're hoping to enhance trust, confidence, visibility for makers and users and reproducers of open healthware, and just basically run the gamut of trying to address those systematic challenges and roadblocks to open healthware. And so it's coming at it here in this presentation from the perspective of we talk to people and hear the things they said. And so kind of building on that idea is we're developing a Likert study, which basically is a study of how much people voiced, what concerns kind of arose from these conversations. And so we talk about themes that are repeatedly emphasized or justified with strongly justified, all the way down to themes that are absent, contradicted, or not highly emphasized by our community. And so going through not only our 100 interviews, but also 4 different workshops, 2 of which were virtual and included a variety of international participants, and 2 of which were in person and had these really nuanced and detailed discussions and back and forth. And so we're analyzing the inputs from our community, not only from 4 core themes: documentation, globalism, globality, marketing and visibility, and reproducibility of healthware, but also across sub-themes and frameworks that are relevant to our community as well. And so some of the results from our initial Likert study, so this is viewing from the lens of documentation, so constraints on documentation, stakeholder needs of documentation, and a vision for the open healthware community as it relates to documentation. And so we went through manually and basically every input from our community members, whether it was a Post-it note or a bullet in a Word document, and there were thousands, and identified which topics that they were emphasizing, whether they strongly justified a theme or didn't include it or so forth, and created this consensus mapping. And so some of the themes that arose are somewhat transparent to our communities. They're going to be familiar ideas that validation and the trustworthiness of open healthware is a big desire for stakeholders, but also a big constraint for makers, is that's a challenging piece of documentation to provide and produce.
Mm-hmm.
And then, kind of parallel to that is we jump to transparent regulatory documents. So this idea of people trying to get FDA certified, people explicitly not trying to get certified and just making a research device. Kind of how do those people play in our community? Can those people be hosted in the same conversation? And how do we do that in a sustainable way? So we'll go through, again, the same type of graph. We've got 4 or 5 different graphs that look just like this, looking from different perspectives and angles on the conversations that we've had. And the hope is that we're going to clarify to people, how does the ecosystem look, and who are the players, and where do they stand? What are the needs, and what are the visions, and what are the constraints of the community? Just trying to bring those out into our presentation.
That's really cool.
I jumped out of screen share. I don't know if you want to keep.
Yeah. Sorry, it takes a minute to do the little switchy. Awesome. Yeah. And this documentation part where you're, making sure that things live on beyond the project, making sure that the work that people do is accessible to the people who need it when they need it, and is, of course, central to what Hackster does as well. Our whole genesis of Hackster being around documentation and tutorial sharing and stuff. So of course, I got to mention that OSHWA has a hub on Hackster that you can follow, and they publish every month. It's weird to talk about it in the third person because I know that you're both part of OSHWA, but for those watching, they publish every month a roundup of new open source hardware certifications. I follow them on various social media, and I find there's always something new and interesting being certified. And I'm gonna get around to certifying some of my own stuff, ideally very soon. But been
Yes, do it.
Y'all are so good at encouraging people, and in fact, Sid and Lee, or I forget who exactly it was, but we had an October certification stream a year or two ago where I was we walked through the whole process, and I was especially surprised and pleased to discover that you don't have to have your thing finished in order to get it certified. Like, for example, I've got something where I'm planning to put on a new, another capacitor. And I was but I gotta do that before I can do the certification, and but no, you can do versions. Fancy that. Anyway, but I'd never seen this type of visibility into what everyone involved in the OSHWA community, people who are using the technology, people who are building it, etc.
And to build on that point, that's something we're also key. It's a continuous process. So attendees to our conference, we want to encourage them to keep talking to us. So we'll have ways for them to continue to put inputs on sticky notes and Google surveys and stuff. So we're still doing this study. We still want to include, the door is not closed on findings for year one and beyond. So we're excited to just keep bringing in new information from new perspectives and keep building our understanding of the ecosystem.
That's wonderful. That's actually a question I had for both of you as well, is both within the ongoing mission of the Open Healthware, but also this conference itself. One thing that you're already doing is you're making it very obvious where the link is for watching the streams, and I'm assuming that those recordings will stay up there. A big part of our early mission at Hackster was to make sure that when people have hackathons, they're building all this new stuff. Then where does it go? Does people ever actually build on what each other are making? And like you said, you're doing sticky notes and Google surveys and stuff to follow up. And for the conference as a whole, are there other ways that people can continue to be involved after the fact? Or are you doing social hours or things to sort of help those connections stay persistent?
Yeah. So there's quite a few different things that we're doing during the actual event. One of the activities that we're going to be doing is walking over. So sorry, to backtrack a little bit, the event is going to be held at Roosevelt Island in New York City. And it's a really beautiful island. And on that island is a smallpox hospital.
Wow.
It's in decay, but we're going to walk over there during the event just to mingle and kind of, just have some networking time, getting to know each other time. I had an idea that we should all wear floral tropical shirts as tour guides. But it's too late for that. It's we're 2 days out. I haven't gotten the t-shirts yet, but and that's one of the.
That's really cool.
Yeah, and that's one of the networking events we're going to be doing. And we really just encourage, we love talking. We're still trying to catch up on socializing since COVID. So please talk to us. Please interact with us. So that's one of the ways. It's really just having conversations. But a few other ways is we're going to continue with year 2 of this NSF grant. We're going to work on the actual findings that we got from year 1, but we're still going to continue these conversations. After the conference, we're having mini sessions to work out educational resources, because that was one of the findings that just kept coming up over and over again in these workshop sessions that we were hosting to gather all these findings. But a lot of people just across the board felt that there was a really big need for educational resources around open source hardware, around open source healthware, and around the community in general. So we're going to continue working on that. At the conference itself, I'm hosting a zine table. So we're going to
Oh,
also just like have an artsy crafts time to really talk about what open source healthware means to us and actually put it down somewhere. And my dream is to make that a resource available to everyone, so that they can see like, oh, what's happening at this conference? I wasn't a part of it, but this is something that came out of it that I can look at.
oh man, that's so. At a previous at an open hardware summit, they had a zine table, and I thought it was awesome, but I didn't have the time to get involved. But in terms of like, we're always asking each other like, what did you see at this talk? What did you see at that talk? Which in itself is a great way to connect with other attendees, and like get their different takes on what the different talks were like. Because everyone takes away something different, but like especially I'd love to see any zines that people make of stuff that comes out of here, or speakers talking about their work, or
Yeah,
fabulous.
I'm
Do you
like
make?
oh, sorry.
Yeah.
I'm just a massive archivist, so I
Mm.
love archiving. I think when we were having these workshops, I was taking pictures of everything, and someone thought it was kind of silly, and I was like, listen, I really think that one day these pictures are going to be like the beginning of this healthware context ecosystem that we've created. So I really want to document that. And yeah, zines and having these little tangibles to explain are amazing for that, but they're also great educational tools just to bring people into the conversation who might not have ever even heard of open source anything.
Yeah. The I really appreciate people who take photos of these things. As an obsessive documentation person, like it's it's separate, sort of a slightly a different area, but like when it comes to technology, it's like I want to remember for myself, and I want to be able to share with people. As long as I'm like remembering for myself, I might as well like share it with other people, and that way you help spread it. With the zines, like so you'll have them physically, right? How does one go about sharing zines online? Is it there like a way that you suggest people, share their knowledge?
Yeah, I'm still
Digitizing.
trying to figure that out myself. I think so. I run like this is totally just on the side, but I run a zine distro, so I distribute just through hands-on markets, outreach, and stuff.
Hmm.
But I think it's something I would love to just bring with me when we have OSHWA events from here on out. I think it's just like I said, a great educational resource. So that's one way. But there's also different zine distribution sites. Like one that I really enjoy is Sprouts Distro, and you can submit your zines to them. You can go to zine fairs. You can kind of do a lot with it. You can put it on your own blog. You can scan it. You can do a lot.
Awesome. I'm trying to pull this up surreptitiously. This is so cool. Yeah. Ooh, cool. Zines. Okay, don't get distracted. So that's one of the things that you're doing to sort of bring the conference into the future beyond this weekend. Then you've got so are there already plans for this conference to happen again next year? So for a lot of people, they may just be hearing about this for the first time. If someone gets really excited and they're like, "Oh, I would love to go in person," will they be able to do that next year? Any idea?
Yeah, we're hoping so. I mean, we have this year 2 of the grant, so we're hoping that this continues.
Yeah. Oh, that's very exciting. And then, pardon? What's the process for people getting involved with this? How would they, if they get really excited about the conference? Obviously, getting engaged somehow digitally this year is one way, but how would they know when to sign up and stuff like that?
Yeah, there's a few different ways. So we have newsletters that go through OSHWA, so we send those out. We also have so many different social medias: Mastodon, Blue Sky, LinkedIn. I I can't even name them all. Instagram. I'm not a social media guy, so I'm coming back to it because of this. But we have a lot of social media. We'll be posting updates there. We have it on Discord, on Hackster, and of course just the OSHWA website. And then like I said, we really want to stay in community. So if you ever just have questions about it, even if we haven't posted, please feel free to reach out. That's totally welcome. Besides that, I'm trying to think. Yeah, I think really just keeping an eye on your inbox and on our online presence. We'll definitely post notifications. We also like to invite folks. So if you see us at the conference, or if you come virtually and want to shoot a message to me or to anyone to kind of stay in touch and have more of a personal connection, totally welcome.
Awesome. And you mentioned the Discord. I'd like to pull this up real quick. So we've got, if you go to OSHWA.org, the main page, you can go scroll down to the bottom and find all of the different communities, including Hackster. It just makes me happy to see the little logo there. And then, of course, Instagram and Mastodon and Blue Sky and all those different ones. Also, the Discord, you just go to the community page, scroll down, and you can find the Discord here. Is this where, if someone wants to like chat with other people during the conference? I know sometimes people have like a special channel for communication.
Yeah, so we actually do have an open Healthware channel on Discord. So if you have any specific questions around that, please ask them. People, I know that last time I rewatched the Open Hardware Summit interview with Sid and Lee, and they were talking about how people like to connect and kind of plan their event and conference attendance through social media. So please do that there if you're coming and you want to, I don't know, jam with someone on Roosevelt Island, if you want to bunk with someone, if you're looking for rides, like please feel free to try to connect with other people through the Discord. And yeah, I mean, I would love to see that happen, and that be a place where people can facilitate those sort of friendships and connections.
Sweet. So Avinash, you've I don't want to neglect you. So you've been part of OSHWA for a while. You're a postdoc as part of the program. What does that mean in terms of like the nuts and bolts of the engagement there?
Yeah, we've been very fortunate to have that NSF grant. And so what that has allowed is to bring some data science perspective and some of that engineering perspective that myself and Eve Hazan, he's our other postdoc, that we're bringing that perspective from academia and from the kind of PhD research publication landscape. And so we are working on at least one paper to discuss our findings in this space, how we've interacted with people, and what they've told us about the ecosystem. And we're also working on some other projects. So we're working on mapping open source hardware to generic medications and some of the challenges that exist. Yes, it's some of the challenges that exist in parallel with open health hardware. Like I mentioned, pharmaceuticals and other spaces like that. So our hope is to bring the technical background that comes with our education to support the healthware ecosystem.
Really cool. Wait, so you said mapping open source hardware to medications? One thing I've heard of is like using blue light as an alternative to caffeine because like people use that to like reset their circadian rhythms. I find that really fascinating. Obviously got to do it in very specific ways so as not to damage your eyes. But I'd love to hear, like, I'm not sure if that's the kind of thing that you're talking about, or like, ways to manage medications, like with timers, or like, what you talking about?
Yeah, so to address your point, there's an emerging space of utilizing health hardware and medications as well called off-label use. So this idea of medications and health hardware may be prescribed or designed for a specific use, but in a specific context or for a specific user population, a clinician may prescribe a different use for it. And so that is one of the spaces that we're talking about is how does that map between healthware, which that's traditionally been off-label use is a really popular space for healthware, and then now generics and medications. So how do we just map those concepts and break down the barriers that exist, kind of the institutional barriers and the kind of mindset barriers that say oh, we can't really apply the same rules of open hardware to that space. Well, we actually can. And so generics, so that is kind of reproductions of existing medications as marketed through different channels. That's one instance of that. We saw the emergency use authorization for ventilator production. That kind of really blurs the line between open hardware and truly medical clinical applications. So that's what we're trying to do, is to show that the rules of open hardware can apply in the health and medical space broadly, including to pharmaceuticals. So one of the other things we're doing there is trying to talk about how IP and patents around
Oh, yeah.
medications, as well as open source in medications, map to those same processes in hardware. So just those typical things that OSHWA tackles, and then trying to apply those same ideas to medications and pharmaceuticals and the range of clinical and medical stuff.
Yeah. Oh man, especially in terms of like the open source and IP question. These are many of the questions I've seen over the years across hardware, being like, for example, um, you know, with open source and security, the fact that the more open something is, often the more eyes you can get on it. And then it can actually enable a small team to make something that's much more secure because it's open, because more people can examine what's going on inside of it, which kind of runs counter to working with some government organizations and other large organizations that maybe don't want to get involved with it because of perceptions around IP issues and things like that, or like just misconceptions around security, which is really interesting. And it just really depending, like, because the commercial options often are not better when it comes to, for example, like pacemakers with their security flaws and anyone being able to update it with something or connect to it, and like being very few safeguards around that. So
Yeah, that's one of those, and we're seeing a lot of these narratives that are arising as we're talking to people. Is people on one side are asking about, what about security, what about keeping things private for the purpose of not misleading others, or not promoting the wrong use of the medical hardware for something it wasn't designed to
right.
do. Doesn't closed help solve that problem? And then of course on the other side, open helps promote research and community engagement, and all these adverse event reporting, all these desirable effects. So kind of that's something we'll talk about in our year one findings, is these are controversies that have existed for a long time, but introducing open really stirs that pot and asks for solutions that don't exist yet.
I'm really curious about, so with Heron especially, talking about overlapping with other art communities. One thing that I've seen coming up recently, and I apologize if this is kind of a little personal divergent, but I've seen people using corsetry, which overlaps a lot with the cosplay community and people who are into steampunk and other aesthetic movements, for Ehlers-Danlos syndrome and POTS and stuff like that. And there's a huge overlap there nowadays. I'm curious about the overlaps you're seeing with other communities. So there's the open source community, hardware, obviously the medical community. Are there other interesting communities that you've seen getting involved with this?
Yeah, totally. So I studied cinema and fine arts,
Mm.
and I play music. So a lot of my interest in hardware has been really focused around. I'm a beginner, just to be clear, but it's been really focused around wanting to create like pedals and music and hardware that kind of makes sounds and art. But I don't know if you saw, but in the schedule we have Ison, who is oh my gosh, so many different things. A doctor, an assistant, or a professor. She also creates like hardware art. It's just incredible. It's really hard to explain.
Mm.
I've been really interested in a lot of her projects because they're just a great mix of art and sound and sensory, but also healthware and hardware, and it's like a really interesting collaboration. And when we were doing these workshops this year that were in person, I was so surprised by how many people who are working on these incredible, really detail-oriented systems like implantables, but who were also playing music and just jamming and experimenting with weird tech and hardware. So it's been really interesting to so I come from reproductive health, and so it's been really interesting to see people who are in the health field, in the healthware field, but who are super interested in these like quirky, artsy music sound hardware. So it's been really cool to see the collaboration between what we generally think of as art as like visual and maybe audio, because music, to really touch others sensories. And it's just, yeah, I'm so glad you pulled this up. I'm so excited to hear Isen's with her students.
Wow, there's so much interesting stuff in here. I gotta not look at this because I will absolutely go down this rabbit hole. And then there's a whole lab section which feels dangerously okay. So,
Yeah, this is really me. Every time I'm looking into these presenters and speakers, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm getting so distracted by all this cool hardware. Yeah, because I come from like the film and art world. My introduction to open source was actually through a group called Grand Fury, who open sourced their artwork and designs. They were really present during the AIDS epidemic. So they started from
wow.
a group called Act Up. That was,
Yeah.
yes, yeah, you already know. But they were fighting for rights for the queer and trans community during the AIDS epidemic. And so out of that group came this other group called Grand Fury that did a lot of their media, their posters, their flyers, and they open sourced everything. So to this day, you can still use all of their media content and their artwork. And
Wow.
they really just completely introduced me to open source in general, and that was a few years ago. So I've definitely found I don't know, I found these like small connections kind of throughout my time learning about what open source is. So yeah, there's just so many different open source communities, and I learn more every day. It's awesome.
Yeah. I had never even thought about art as like an open source thing, but that absolutely, in the world of IP, there's all these people doing, free resources. Like, here's a bunch of free game resources. There's someone who always like is releasing different models people can use, and other tools and stuff. All the stuff that's on Thingiverse, is equally useful for like across art, medical stuff, tools for the home, all kinds of different things. Oh man,
Yeah, it's been really
stuff.
cool. Another kind of new idea that's been presented was actually during these workshops. Chris from Cosmic mentioned that they actually open sourced their documentation for filling out uh, paperwork for their open source item. So it was not only like the item itself was open source, but the documentation to get that item through different channels, like the FDA, was also open source so that people could use that resource. And I thought that was like inception. My brain was like, you open source a document for open sourcing a thing. That's cool.
Yeah. Access, of course, is a huge thing. There's, not everyone has a 3D printer. Not everyone has access to the even if the information is open source. We've seen this before in terms of like open sourcing power systems and batteries. It's like, yes, it's open source, but like, who can actually make this who doesn't have your factory and things like that. And then doing that on a more personal level with like, including like interpersonal access. Like, I don't have, the knowledge to write a grant for this or to like dive into the access request for the governmental documents or whatever, and like open sourcing that knowledge being equally crucial to especially medical applications, but as well as more frivolous and fun applications, which do overlap. We were talking about art and science overlapping. Avinash, I see that you mentioned this really quickly as well. That you have you're a NASA space grant PhD fellow at Auburn, and one of the things that I find most interesting about what is going on with this NASA sort of cultural moment is that because it's a governmental agency under certain in certain circumstances, all their design assets are free for people to use. And obviously, that's not the, the only thing. But I'm curious about your experience with. It was really cool, and I want to say this right. You conducted cutting-edge research in computational neuromechanics and robust optimal control of robotic exoskeletons for astronaut health and performance. So, is that can people go and dig this up and just look at it, or like where can we learn more about your research?
Yeah, I probably should have done a better job of making that,
I kind
accessible
of
to
cut you
people.
off a little bit. I'm sorry at the start
No,
there.
no,
So
that's great. I could go down a rabbit hole on that, but
yeah.
I think definitely this idea of basically coming from prosthetics and rehab idea, but designed for spacesuits, designed for astronauts. So this idea that astronauts experience fatigue and neuromuscular disorientation at a pretty high level by not only being in space, but also in order to make the best use of resources in space like oxygen and food, they have to be working 8 to 10 hours a day nonstop doing rigorous
Wow.
activities like installing solar panels and so forth. So the idea of developing um, exoskeletons and spacesuit components the way we develop them for elderly or disabled people on Earth, uh, but for astronauts and for that application of space. So that was the design thinking there, and then of course the ideas of data driven, so the neuromechanics. So that's how the brain interacts with the body, uh, AI, machine learning, modeling, fatigue, effort, intent. And so those different things, it's kind of well known in the rehab community, so people can certainly look those things up and find that out. But just that idea and process of how do we link these two seemingly disparate ideas of rehabilitation engineering and space health and wellness and astronaut readiness, which are actually really similar human experience and design questions.
Wow, yeah. I remember seeing a talk by Lee Wilkins at the Analog Astronaut Conference a couple of years ago where, so many of the space related, support devices like, spacesuits and stuff, a lot of the living environments are designed for people who are assumed to be very much like standard and abled in like the most like this is the standard human, even to the point where like astronauts were losing their fingernails because the gloves were a certain length and your fingers would hit the edge of the end of the fingers, which is mind blowing to me. Like things like that where they're sort of assumed to be a standard human. And talking about people who may become more higher needs due to things they're experiencing in space, like fatigue and like the ongoing stresses that all the stuff that they go through, eyes expanding and stuff like that, uh, but and bones weakening and things. But even it would be cool to see this be able to bring people with different abilities and stuff to space in the first place, which I think is such a fascinating area. I wonder if you've seen anything around that.
Yeah, I mean, and it's certainly the idea that NASA develops a technology to solve a problem, and then on Earth we take that technology and use it to solve different problems. And things like the microwave,
Yes.
developed to solve an astronaut problem, is now a standard appliance on Earth. And I think that's the same perspective of trying to influence thinking on Earth and the how we tackle the problems that we have by thinking about them of what if we try to solve this in space. So this idea is about what if we try to solve fatigue in space. Well, in space there's vacuum, in space there's power and space constraints, so pneumatics become a much more viable alternative. And so now a lot of rehabilitation devices for elderly people on Earth to help them regain mobility and exercise in ways that are comfortable and safe are pneumatically powered. And so this idea that you know, trying to solve these problems in space and then using those same techniques into, bringing that knowledge back to Earth in that way.
And of course, it goes the other way as well because, for example, like I think the first people who created spacesuits for the U.S. was the makers of Wonder Bra, if I've got that correctly. It was one of those companies. I think maybe is it Playtex? Oh, I always forget. But they were people who were used to working with the body on Earth, supporting and compressing and shaping the body, and they ended up being like the people who were the most qualified to make spacesuits for people in space. So of course, the interactions there are fascinating, and the more that we can like get people involved, like from the disability community on Earth, the more like these are the real experts who like live with it every day. And I'm going off on a little tangent here. I want to bring it back to what you folks are doing, but okay, so let's see. Bringing it back, actually, what have you done in terms of like accessibility options for people attending? What can they expect? I think telepresence is a huge one, both for carbon stuff and people being able to attend. But please.
Yeah, totally. So there's a few things. One of the accessibility things was making sure that this event was free, that there was a virtual option as well as an in-person option. And with the virtual option, it was for a lot of different accessibility needs. Also, just traveling right now is really difficult for a lot of people. So wanting to really emphasize that there's a way to be looped in. There's communications that we can have on Discord, on social media, and really emphasize that we can create connections virtually too for people who can't make it to the event. And then for the folks that are there in person, accessibility needs, the event is happening at Cornell Tech in the Verizon Executive Education Center, which has an elevator. It has ramps. It's ADA accessible. It's also located on Roosevelt Island, which has an accessible subway station, which is really awesome and pretty rare, I think, in New York, as someone in Brooklyn for a bit. So those are a few things, and then we have some more ADA information on our website, or on the event page. But yeah, those are just a few.
Very cool. Thank you. All right. Let's see. Going down, I've written down like 8,000 things. How can people support what the organization is doing? I'd love to hear this from both of your perspectives, like what you're doing, what Open Healthware is doing, what the conference is doing, what OSHWA is doing. If people want to get involved, obviously this is a great way to start. It's just by attending this conference and getting in touch. But
yeah, attending, getting in touch, staying in touch, really just connecting. And I think a big thing right now is that a lot of people are so new to this world, and whether or not they're actually like part of it, they're building, they're replicators, they're designers. I think healthware in general is just very, very new to the open source world, very new to the hardware world. And then open source just in general is very new to a lot of people in the rest of the world. And so I think really one thing to really support is just getting the word out, connecting with your communities to let them know this is something that exists. But also, yeah, just being part of the community and joining us on in whatever way that feels right for you, whether that's online or in person. If you have items that want to get certified, that's a really great way to keep in touch and stay in the OSHWA community. But yeah, if Avinash, if you want to share some too.
No, that's great. I think just to add on there, plus one would be certifying open devices. So if you
yes.
have technology that you're developing, is go and get certified or apply for certification and kind of go through that process and tell us your feedback and thoughts. So we've got over 3,000 certified open hardware projects. And so we just want to keep expanding that and getting feedback from people of what they like or what they don't like about the certification. So we'll have some Google survey things there. And that would be the second thing of, we're still collecting data about the community. We want to understand people's perspectives, what people are looking for, and kind of fleshing out the vision for open healthware and OSHWA in open hardware. So we'll be sending those Google forms out and just wanting to keep getting input from people.
Cool. I'm like, what is the most health-related one on here? Obviously, there's going to be wearables, but you've worked on robotics. One of the things that came up in your bio is that you've designed and fabricated open-source autonomous robots that prevented life-threatening injuries and disease transmissions, both in the U.S. and abroad. I'm really curious about. So, during the height of COVID, we saw a lot of people building. Actually, Hackster ran a competition, including UV sterilization robots for rooms and things like that. And what other things can people do to use robotics to help with their health?
Yeah, so I'll give a quick example and study. This was very surprising to me, but it's one of those examples of how anyone, anywhere can get involved. So there's a problem in power engineering where in order to go and interact with a high voltage breaker, you have to put on PPE, you have to follow all the right protocols because it's a dangerous implement to interact with. Because if you press something wrong or if something is going on, you could have what's called arc flash. So you could flash and sparks fly everywhere. Or in worst case scenarios, you've got fire hazard. It could erupt. All kinds of bad things can happen. Not that they usually happen. They usually don't happen. But regardless, it costs time and energy, and it's difficult, especially in places where that are high in temperature, so it's hard to put on PPE and walk
Mm.
throughout a power facility and be doing everything. So at an internship I did in undergrad, I developed a chicken switch. So it's kind of like, oh, it's like you're a chicken, but basically you just magnetize it to the switchboard, and then it's got a little 3D printer type of XY navigation, and then it just goes and presses buttons for you, so that you don't have to put on PPE. And so what happened there is, I produced that project, and we sent it off to a power. It's like a renewable power plant in Scotland, I think. And I found out years later in my exit interview, I was like, oh, by the way, you did a great job with that, because there was a catastrophic arc fault at that breaker uh, panel, and essentially saved the life of the person who would have been handling that equipment. So it was a really simple project. I basically just turned a 3D printer sideways and stuck it to a breaker panel. Uh, it,
Wow.
it's a simple project. Anyone can do it, and it saves someone's life. And that's just an example of connecting existing needs with open technology and just kind of moving forward from there.
That's sweet. I know the very technical term. I find that extremely sweet. But yeah, I've heard of assistive robots and like sterilization robots and robots to do the dirty tasks. So that, well, actually, uh, isn't that the 3Ds of assistive or replacing humans with robots? Is like the 3Ds of tasks are dirty, dangerous, and dull. In one of those orders, and in this case, it's absolutely the dangerous ones. But I've never heard of that before. Super cool. Okay, let's see. We're actually getting close to the end of our time here, so I there's a whole bunch of stuff there that I'm probably just going to jump on Discord and harass you about. But both of you, thank you so much for joining. I'm going to go back through the stuff that we pulled up today so that people know, what we talked about, how to get involved, how to attend the conference and stuff. But I'd also love to hear if you have any, little things that you'd like to throw in there at the end that we didn't maybe quite get to, or like wrap up thoughts. I'm going to take us through our tabs and you can think about it maybe. All right. So we've got the Open Healthware conference page. It is this Friday and Saturday, hope I get that right, in New York City and online. We've heard a bunch of stuff about how to attend, really cool talks that are going to be going on. I've already heard about a whole new artist that I didn't know existed and is doing really, really cool stuff that I had to avoid getting sucked into. You can already go and, I'm going to subscribe for one thing, and I think you can say that you're waiting somehow, but then there's also the information about the NSF POSE grant. So next year is already going to happen. If you want to get involved with the next year as a speaker, or help support it in other ways, then you can already know that that's going to be happening and get involved. You can just go to the main OSHWA page and scroll all the way down here to find various social media platforms, as well as the YouTube channel, which of course is linked there. If you go to the OSHWA community page, you can join the Discord and just keep in touch with a bunch of cool nerds. Honestly, incredible group of people. Sign up on Eventbrite. Again, it is totally free. And then I have duplicate tabs here because I'm a mess. But I pulled up the grant page. OSHWA certification, of course. Like Avinash mentioned, you can contribute to the whole project by certifying your stuff and giving feedback on the process. We walked through it a couple of years ago in October for Open Hardware certification, Open Hardware Month. We did a whole stream on certification. And I think that actually Aisha Iftikhar was on that as well. I think it was Aisha and Sid. But anyway, she makes a ton of cool stuff. You can scroll through what everyone's making. I think you said over 3,000 things have been certified, which is just incredible. And you can go ahead and do that, even if your thing isn't 100% finished, or if you're going to be revising it, let's say. Don't worry about waiting for the next version. You can just go ahead and do it. All right, so Open Healthware Conference, very excited to attend. What's up, folks? Let's say Avinash first. Any last thoughts?
No, just think part of the community. Something I mentioned to our workshop attendees is that y'all are my heroes. I recently graduated with my PhD, so I've been following
Congrats.
the open community. Thank you, and the folks who are people like you who are documenting and helping to bring new information to the community, and then the makers who are soldering and CAD, SolidWorks design, in the labs, are really my heroes, and I'm trying to do everything I can to support you, and just excited to be a part of this community.
Oh yeah, what you mentioned brings up another thought for me, which is open friendly tools and open source tools. There's some manufacturing stuff on the schedule already, which is virtually off to my right here, I guess. And I'd love to maybe I'll bring a talk next year about that. Woo! Anyway, Herine, what's up?
Yeah, that would be awesome. Please do. I really just want to say thank you for having us, and it's been really exciting to be part of this community, especially coming from reproductive health, which is also just a huge accessibility need. And so I'm really thankful that that we're not alone in this medical world right now, and that there's people doing work that is hopefully going to make medical devices more accessible, and just well used in diverse communities. But I also wanted to just add that if you are making any hardware that is health medical related, please reach out. We cannot create this community without you. And something that keeps coming up is just people saying like, oh, I'm so glad that I'm part of OSHWA now because I've been so alone in this, or I haven't had anyone to talk to about these things. And so we really, really want to make those connections. So please, if you've heard of incredible projects, even if you're just, starting, please reach out, connect with us. We really want to support you. We really want to connect you to people who can also support you. And yeah, just get the word out. Thank you to the NSF grant. Thank you to Hackster. Thanks to everyone who's been super supportive during this first year of building this healthware ecosystem, and we truly could not do it without you all.
Well, thank you for your efforts in bringing all these amazing people together and making a place for people to collaborate and learn about each other's work. Those cross connections are so incredibly powerful when you get people from different disciplines connecting. I've already railed about that. I don't need to do that again. But anyway, just the fact that you're creating this space for it makes me so happy. So thank you both so much. Thank you everyone for watching. And please, I would love to see you all in the Discord at the conference this weekend, Friday and Saturday. All right. Cheers, everybody. Hack on.